With regards to the minimum and maximum, in fact, there are over 7 or 8 opinions on the issue. And you find, some ulama, very few in the classical period, and it's become very common in our period, to claim that you cannot touch the beard at all. Let it grow even if it goes down to the floor. And this is something that, in fact, you do not find any of the classical ulama that I have researched, and Allah knows best who said this. But this is an opinion that has been popularized by certain scholars, and they say you cannot touch the beard at all. On the other hand, on the other extreme, you have people who say it is obligatory that you must trim the beard after a certain length, and they usually say after one fistful. And in the middle, there are 4 or 5 positions. How can it be in the middle? Well, some say it is mustahab to trim, some say it's mustahab not to trim, some say you're allowed to trim below the fist length, some say you can trim from the sides and not from the bottom, etc., etc. There's many different opinions out there. Looking at all of them and their evidences, one thing is quite clear. The Prophet ﷺ commanded growing the beard. This has been reported in over 5 or 6 traditions, most of which are in Bukhari and Muslim, in Musnad Ahmad, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi. The Prophet said, "A'ful liha, waffiru liha," keep on growing the beard. He said, don't pluck it. So when he said, don't pluck the beard and let it grow, this is quite clear that this is an obligation, that we must follow it. It is reported by at least 3 of the Sahaba and at least 10 of the Tabi'un that they used to trim their beards. Some of them after a fistful, some of them only during Hajj and Umrah, but over 10 of the early scholars of Islam used to trim their beards to some fashion. And this shows us that they understood from the command of the Prophet ﷺ that the prohibition is not to trim, but the prohibition is to not have a beard. So they understood that if you trim it after a fistful, if you trim it after a length, this does not contradict the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ to grow the beard. Growing the beard means you grow it. It doesn't mean you're not allowed to touch it at all. It means you have something called a beard. So the fact that these early Sahaba and Tabi'un trimmed to a certain level, some later scholars would then say, okay, since they trimmed only to a fistful, this is the minimum requirement. But the question arises here, now hold on a sec. If the Sahaba or Tabi'un only trimmed to a fistful, does that make it a legal ruling in our religion? Some would say yes, it does, and that is a position of many ulama. I do not agree with this basic usuli principle, and I would say the fact that the Sahaba or the Tabi'un trimmed to a fistful shows us, the maximum that it shows us, is that this is a good length, and it is a mustahab length to have. To claim that a person is sinful for trimming more than a fistful, if you like, having a beard less than a fistful, to claim a person is disobeying Allah and His Messenger, I think that's very, very harsh statement to derive from the actions of the Sahaba and Tabi'un. I think that the most that can be derived is that the beard has an optimal length, and that optimal length is a fistful. If somebody has a beard that is of a smaller length than a fistful, I do not think that such a person is sinful at all. He has not disobeyed Allah and His Messenger. You might say it is makruh. You might. If somebody said this, I would see where they're coming from. And it could even be argued it is mubah and not makruh. So the question is, what is the bare minimum? Well, the bare minimum for this needs to be looked at linguistically. What is a lihya? And the majority position of the linguists and the grammarians is that a lihya, the Arabic word for a beard, is that which grows on the cheeks and the chin. There is one very strange opinion, minority opinion, that a beard is only that which grows on the chin. So you find some of the modern du'at and scholars shave everything except what grows on the chin, and they say this is a bare minimum of a lihya. And they have some evidence because they have some linguistic grammarians that support it. But the majority position, which has been held by the majority of linguists, including Ibn al-Athir, including Ibn Mandur, including Al-Fayruzabadi, and others, I'll have to look up some more names, but the majority position has been that the beard is that which grows on the cheeks and the chin. Therefore, if a person has facial hair that constitutes a beard, when you look at it you think this is a beard, then I think that a person has met the bare minimum obligation and they are not sinful for it. I do not think the Sharia has a minimum in terms of centimeters, in terms of, I think this is going a little bit too, we're getting a little bit too, specific.
Well, what about the, what's very common now where it's just like a thin line that goes down the draw line?
The draw line, if somebody looks at it, I really don't think this is called a beard, even in the English language. I think this is a facial hair that no shaving for 2 days. I think a reasonable amount of hair, and here's the point now, who defines what is reasonable? I don't have a precise definition. I mean, when you see a beard, you know what it is. It's not, you cannot, nobody takes a measuring tape and measures how long the hairs are and how wide it is. I think that's a bit too precise. But what you're talking about, that pencil line, which is less than, 1 millimeter, and, the hair is literally just not shaved for 2 days, that doesn't quite constitute a beard, because it's not the full cheeks, it's not the full cheekbones and the full chin that a person has hair on in any case. So, to shave the hair of the upper cheeks and the hair beneath the chin on the throat, this is pretty much unanimous consensus allowed. I mean, there's hardly any difference. To shave the hair that's below the eyebrows, for example, below the eyes, right, really high up on the cheek, upper cheekbone, and to just shave the hair on the throat, this does not constitute the beard, because that's not the beard, that's other facial hair. But to shave more and more down to the cheek to just get that pencil line, as you said, I think that is problematic, and it doesn't do justice to the beard. So, I would say, if a person uses your average trimmer that is found in the supermarkets, right, and they trim to a reasonable length, and they shave, and they have a fashionable beard, if you like, and that's very common amongst Muslims, I would say they have done the minimum. They are not sinful, but it is mustahab, and it is encouraged to grow it longer, and I would say the optimum amount should be to have a fistful, because that is what the Sahaba did. I would say it is definitely mustahab to have that long of a beard, and Allah knows best.